Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we'll be focusing on the common market for the Eastern and Southern Africa, the COMESA, and the latest summit of the COMESA, which took place in Egypt in the past week, and of course the bilateral economic and trade ties between Egypt and the bloc over the past 20 years as Egypt finally assumed the chairmanship or the presidency of the COMESA for the upcoming year under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. We'll be having more details on this event which took place in the past week, as well as the main points of the speech of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi during his attendance of the summit of the COMESA in Egypt. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report, so stay tuned.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi sent key messages in last week's COMESA summit as Egypt assumed the chairmanship of the African Economic Group. In his speech, President al-Sisi reviewed the COMESA summit's medium-term strategic action plan for the period 2021-2025, which aims to deepen economic integration, regional integration and development among the group's member states. President al-Sisi sent the following messages to the attendees as follows. Egypt encourages land connection projects between the countries of the continent, foremost of which is the Cairo-Cape Town project, which passes through most of the COMESA countries. Egypt seeks to complete the efforts made to study the feasibility of the project to connect the Mediterranean Sea and Lake Victoria. Egypt will work to transfer its expertise in the electricity and energy sector to the member states. Egypt encourages the movement of investments in the region, which requires more efforts from the member states and the General Secretariat to use the unique components enjoyed by the COMESA countries. Egypt is working on preparing a list to fill the necessary data gaps, which will provide clear investment opportunities. Egypt supports the region's integration in the health sector and is aware of the importance of the common market to study the matter quickly. Egypt aims to move forward to raise awareness among citizens of the region to benefit from vaccinations to prevent the spread of coronavirus within the region. Egypt will seek to encourage all initiatives that contribute to facilitating the business environment. Egypt will work to increase the engagement of the Egyptian business community with its counterparts from the COMESA members. Egypt remains confident that COMESA possesses the capabilities and resources that qualify it to overcome the current challenges imposed by the coronavirus pandemic and move forward in the process of economic integration.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. As I said in the beginning, that tonight we'll be focusing on the COMESA and Egypt assuming the chairmanship or the presidency of the COMESA under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. And the summit itself, the 21st summit, took place in Egypt in the past week. To be shedding more light on this event, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio today Mrs. Heba Salah, the political science researcher. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me tonight.
First of all, the importance of hosting the summit of the COMESA in Egypt, and at the same time President al-Sisi assuming the leadership and the presidency of this economic bloc. What is the importance of that?
The importance of that this is the second time that Egypt took over the chair of the COMESA since 2001. This is the second time, so it's a great deal for Egypt to be involved more in Africa and to prove its presence in the African continent. Let's talk to the viewer first about what is the COMESA, or explain more what does it stand for. COMESA is the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. It consists of 21 African member states, and they came together to promote the regional cooperation and integration through trade and creating a full trade area between the African member states. And of course, to benefit the whole region afterwards, which will reflect soon on the whole continent. COMESA was initially established in 1981. It was called the PTA, Preferential Trade Area for Southern and Eastern Africa, and then it turned into the COMESA, or transformed into the COMESA, in 1994. Of course, it will focus more on the economic cooperation as well as the industrial cooperation between the African countries. And it has four main objectives, which will, of course, reflect on each country as well.
Yes. So you said that it had a previous name, the PTA, and then it was transformed into the COMESA in 1994. So why was it founded? And the main objectives, as you mentioned, four main objectives, were they reached in the past years or not?
Not totally reached. It has its, of course, drawbacks, but with the new formation of the COMESA and the leading of this, the mid-term strategic plan of 2021-2025, it will for sure enhance the economic integration and the industrial, as well as it will reflect on all the fields, whether it's in the health sector, in the investments. It will bring more goods and services into the continent, so it will probably reflect and benefit all of the region.
Yes, during the speech and the report that we just saw on the Daily Debate for tonight, the speech of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, it focused on the strategy of Egypt as the leader of the COMESA for the upcoming year, that we need to be having more integration, more coordination economically, to be reaching the free trade areas or the free trade deals. Yes. That is the main objective for the year. Can we reach this in a year or not?
It's hard to say currently if it's easy to reach it or not, but Egypt has decided to start removing the tariff and the non-tariff barriers between the African member states in the COMESA, and it's going to agree on a single tariff on all the imported goods and services that come from the non-COMESA countries, which of course will benefit and will bring more of a foreign currency to the African continent. And it will enhance the free movement of capital and investments, which will create a business-friendly environment for all the member states, and it will enhance their economy and their political situations. It will, of course, affect and reduce the conflicts that the African states currently are passing through. So it will definitely benefit the African countries.
Yes, as a political science researcher and delving from the economy to politics, how do you see the strategy of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry in the past 7 or 8 years to be coming back to Africa, to be having better bilateral relations between Egypt and Africa in general, not just the economy?
The Egyptian government is looking forward to making the most of the presidency, of the second presidency of COMESA this year, since 20 years later since 2001. And the Egypt's presidency will support the determined efforts with other African countries to enhance the economic integration as well as the political cooperation between the countries. And it will also mitigate the obstacles that hinder the development phase, or that hinder the development of the African member states.
Yes, what are the main challenges that are obstacles that we have to look through now?
Mainly poverty, because Africa suffers from poverty, and also that I think that Africa has great potentials, and if we believed in these potentials, we can achieve anything. So we have to focus on eliminating poverty. We have also to focus on the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which I think that it's very important to create a large market size for the economy and also the political situation to thrive. And also the infrastructure. Egypt has been focusing on the infrastructure field a great deal, and it will benefit other African countries in exchanging experiences and so on. So Egypt, I think it's going to lead the path into another, hopefully, a bright future.
Yes, to be leading the path into a bright future. We have experience, at least in infrastructure, under the tenure of President al-Sisi. I'm speaking in the past 7 or 8 years, we have a revolution in infrastructure. We have a revolution in the Sustainable Development Goals as well. We have several visions, including Africa 2030 and 2063. So how successful are we in Egypt to be reaching those goals, to be having better infrastructure, bigger roads, bigger cities, new cities as well, and to be replicating the same experience and the expertise that we have in Egypt into Africa?
This will happen through cooperation between the African member states. If we successfully cooperated between each other, we will achieve anything, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic and the effect it has on the economy global-wide and internally on each and every member state. So if we succeeded to cooperate with each other, I think we will achieve and benefit each other from exchanging experiences and having like a scope, a wider scope to achieve more development in the African continent in general.
Yes, and speaking of the longer-term goals from 2021 till 2025, we have a plan for the COMESA, and President al-Sisi reviewed it in the past week. What are the main objectives and the goals in the upcoming 4 or 5 years?
I think that creating the free trade area is one of the most important things between the African countries now, and also the free movement of capital and investment, which will reflect on each a member state positively afterwards. And creating an open communication channels between the governments and the member states will help to enhance and develop furthermore the goals that we want to reach in the future.
Yes, the free trade area. We've spoken about this for years now in Africa. We have the same example in the European Union. We have the same successful example. They have a single currency, they have no or a customs union. It is easier there in terms of the trade and the economy. What is stopping us from doing this?
Maybe the conflicts that we're witnessing nowadays in the African continent is is making like an obstacle in front of us to achieve these points. Having a common currency, of course, is something that also is constitute an obstacle in front of us. So maybe if we worked on strengthening the relationships between the African countries more, helping each other to develop and to create more common areas, because we share the same region, and also we share the same destiny, and the history is a lot. We have a lot of commons between us, so we have to work on this more.
Yes, to be concentrating on Egypt, we need to be helping. How do you see this strategy under President Sisi, for example, in the past 7 or 8 years, that we are helping the Africans and we need to be cooperating more? How do you see this being translated as words here into action on the ground?
Actions on the ground, the challenges that we're facing currently will constitute as a motivation for the COMESA to thrive. So if we deepened the economic integration and the industrial and created the market integration between the African countries, we will sure reach this goal and reach this point afterwards. So we have to work on the economic integration, because starting from the economy and eliminating the poverty in the African states, we can start to do more better things afterwards.
Eliminating poverty, do we need outside help from Africa?
Of course, we have the investment and the investment in the free movement of capital and investment. It will help a great deal in eliminating poverty. We can focus more on the small and medium enterprise projects that will get bigger by time. So this can help a great deal with this. Yes.
And the small and medium enterprises, how do you see the plan here in Egypt? Is it going well? Is it getting to the target that we need to be replicating the same experience in Africa, or do we need in Egypt more time?
Of course we need time, because each step it has to go through a lot of phases, and we need to open up new opportunities for the youth, and we need to also focus on getting the youth to participate in building the economy, because we cannot only focus on the investments that are coming from abroad. We have to work on ourselves to build ourselves.
Yes, the youth. We have the World Youth Forum in Egypt in January.
Yes.
Yes. How do you see the importance of getting young men and young women from all over the world to be discussing the future, of Africa specifically, to be getting them into positions of responsibility for the future? And of course, we also have, or we had, the Youth Forum for the African Youth. It was held in Aswan, as President Sisi was in Aswan in the past 2 or 3 days as well. How do you see the importance of this idea itself, the vision of getting young men and young women from all over the world, and specifically from Africa?
Engaging the youth in the political process and in everyday process is very important to achieve this goal. So encouraging youth to participate, to come up with new ideas, to try to express themselves more, to show the world that they can do difference, will definitely reflect on achieving the goals and on achieving what we thrive to do. So I think that the Youth Forum is a great opportunity to open new communication channels with other countries, with Europe, with America, with North America, and so on. So it will be a great deal, yes.
We always speak about the customs union, the free trade agreements, the common markets for Africa. But if we see on the ground what is happening, there is a big difference between the economic growth, for example, between countries in North Africa and countries in West Africa, to say the least. And we saw the same problem in Europe, that it is a bit unfair for the wealthier countries and it's a bit better for the poorer countries. Someone has to be carrying the burden. Do we have the the same problem here in Africa, or the GDP and the growth rates are quite the same?
No, I don't believe that it's quite the same. There's big difference because the culture affects the countries and the societies. So I think if we focused more on building the culture in or enhancing the way of thinking of some African countries, we can reach this goal, and we can help them to like follow the path of the other more developed countries.
Yes, exactly. We have over the phone Ambassador Wael Adel Nasr, the former assistant to the foreign minister, to be focusing on the same topic, the COMESA and its importance, and holding the summit in Egypt in the past week. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us today on the Daily Debate.
You're welcome. Thank you.
First of all, how do you see the importance of holding the COMESA summit in Egypt in the past week in the country, and of course the assuming the presidency or the chairmanship of the COMESA under the leadership of President Sisi?
Probably the chairmanship of the COMESA is periodical, so it comes every 20 years almost to each country. That's number one. Number two, of course, having it in Egypt this year would give us a good chance to boost, enhance, and try to put some more input and potential in the COMESA.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, President Sisi also spoke about the integration between the African countries, the coordination and the economic cooperation between Egypt and the African countries in specific, and the African countries in general, as Egypt is speaking on behalf of the 21 countries in the COMESA itself. The free trade deals or the free trade agreements, we have spoken about them for a long time. How do you see this being happening or being translated on the ground in the upcoming year, if it could be happening?
Well, we don't have to concentrate or limit the action on the COMESA on the next coming year. The
Yes.
COMESA is there from 94 and as an idea from 81, and the COMESA will assume its job for as much as it can. Speaking about doing a big change or a leap in 1 year, that's not really realistic. We can put ideas on the table, we can push towards these ideas, but first we have to work on the obstacles that exist, and we always talk about enhancing the cooperation, enhancing the ideas, enhancing theoretically, but we until the moment I see that there are still some persisting problems, some persisting historical obstacles that has not been removed yet so far. And it might need some time to be removed. It needs some political will as much as political action to remove these obstacles.
Yes, in your opinion, what are the main obstacles, the historical obstacles, as you mentioned, that cannot be beaten in the upcoming year?
In the upcoming year, you cannot remove any obstacle of the obstacles that exist. Because you cannot, in 1 year, Egypt alone cannot remove a historical problem that exists in mentally, at least in Africa, in the sense that we could feel that, or it's not a feeling, rather it's a reality, that Africa has got its political independence, but I don't think that we have got our mental or psychological independence yet. We still have an issue in trust among African nations. We always prefer to look north and getting the foreign experts rather than having each other helping each other. So what I always say during my work in Africa, that no one is going to help Africa but the Africans themselves. And we have to realize that the former imperial powers are not going to be the ones who will give us a push to be independent and to stand alone and say, hey, we don't need help from anyone. We are self-sufficient. That needs hard work to be done. We have to get rid of the inferiority complex towards the white man, if I could say it bluntly. We have all the experience behind us. We have everything we need. We have all the raw materials. We have experts in Egypt, in Algeria, in Southern Africa, in Namibia, Angola, everywhere. You have experts in separate fields. We can integrate each other, but the playground is not really clear for us to start working on this integration. That's why I'm saying that we have to work on the issues that is standing in the road towards cooperation, real free trade. Historically, when we look to Europe, war among European countries in the last 100 years has just saw more than 60 million souls. Where in Africa, we have never had such a war. Even the only civil war recently that happened in Rwanda was imported from outside. It was not an indigenous civil war. So that was planned at the former colonial power of Rwanda. But what could collect us is much more than what could differentiate us. So the point is we have to work on these issues. And plus this psychological or historical issues, I would say that still we need the loss of infrastructure to be done in Africa, the roads connecting Africa. For example, you don't have a single road connecting East and West Africa.
Yes.
Not a single road. We start working on the NEPAD initiative on the road from Alexandria to Cape Town. That's a great road. And there is only missing a few hundred kilometers and it will be completed. The second initiative that His Excellency the President is pushing towards, which is connecting Lake Victoria to the Mediterranean Sea. And that will make a huge leap in the trade between African countries and even European countries.
Yes.
We could still export from Africa to Europe through this Lake Victoria Mediterranean Sea road. It's not a road, it's literally a naval road. So that's one. Two, it will definitely make a boost towards trade between the African countries. I will just give you a simple example. Egypt is importing meat from Latin America, from Asia. It goes as far as New Zealand, where we have in Africa, livestock could even feed the whole world. And the only obstacle in transferring the meat from Africa to Egypt is the infrastructure. There's no roads. The naval road is not really programmed in such a way that we could transfer it. Even among the African countries itself, it's hard to transfer the meat from few hundred kilometers until the port where you're going to export it. So infrastructure is a must. We cannot move forward one step without having a proper infrastructure. If you build infrastructure, you build a whole country or a whole continent. Look to the European after all these wars among each other, and then at the end of the day, when they find that their own interest is in collaborating together, they created the European market, which elaborated to the European Union later on. So why not we do this in Africa? A major obstacle, like I said, is the infrastructure from one point. Your guests have mentioned also a common currency or whatever it takes to create a monetary system to facilitate the exchange of goods and money and currency between the African nations. Lots lots of things on the paper, but I hope that this year Egypt will give it a push at least to move the wheel.
Yes.
At least to hold the wheel on the right direction. And I believe that we have the potential and the momentum to do it.
So the solution comes from within Africa, as you mentioned, Mr. Ambassador, and specifically under the leadership of Egypt for the COMESA in the upcoming year. One important field as well that President Al-Sisi spoke of during his speech was the health and the pharmaceutical sector in Egypt and in Africa. And we did see in the past 7 or 8 years, as Egypt was the head of the African Union, to be transferring the expertise and the same initiatives that we have here in Egypt to be combating virus C, for example, were replicated in Africa. How do you see this as an important step for the Africans?
Well, definitely, this is a very good step. I mean, if we start giving the African our experience in fighting the virus C, that would really be great. And let me add one more point, is that Egypt as a country, we have real credibility in Africa more than any other foreign country. Our brothers in Africa, they know that Egypt doesn't have any hidden agenda when it comes to cooperate with them. Rather than different other countries coming from outside the continent, they all, and I mean all, have their own agenda. They are not just coming to help just for the sake of help. Of course, they have their interest, economic interest, but it doesn't stop at economic interest. It goes far beyond that. So when it comes to Egypt helping and cooperating with African countries, we as an African country, as the most ancient African country, we have real credibility and real history behind us that is really appreciated and accepted by our brothers in Africa. So, like you said, pharmaceutical and medicine, we have the medical convoy that goes to Africa more than once a year, different African nations. They just do some, operations, surgical operations, and it really has left, a good stamp there. I mean, so we should continue on that and rather increase it on a bigger scale.
Yes, Ambassador Wael Adel Nasr, the former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. And we will be having an upcoming report about the trade ties between Egypt and the COMESA.
The Information and Decision Support Center of the Cabinet has released a study on the trade relations between Egypt and the COMESA community. The center said that COMESA is among the most important trading partners for Egypt within the African continent. The volume of trade exchange between Egypt and COMESA countries recorded about $3 billion in 2020, accounting for about 60% of the total trade exchange between Egypt and the African continent last year. The center also said that Egypt had a trade surplus of $1.4 billion from its business relations with the COMESA countries during 2020. The study indicated that the COMESA countries are among the most promising markets for Egyptian exports, as the value of the export potential to these countries is about $1.8 billion by 2025. The study pointed out that Egypt's exports to Libya, Kenya, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Tunisia have the largest export potential in 2025, estimated at $2.3 billion, while Eswatini recorded the highest export potential of 94.7%. The study also indicated the most prominent commercial competitors for Egyptian exports within the COMESA market in 2020, as China came at the top of the countries with exports worth 12.7% of total COMESA imports, followed by South Africa, then India with $7.4 billion and Turkey with $3.7 billion. The study also recommended developing a flexible strategy to promote Egyptian exports in line with the current trade indicators with each country, as well as establishing a unified observatory of data, studies and analysis of African countries.
Of course, as we did see, Decent Life is gathering us. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was in Aswan in the past couple of days and checking on the Egyptians living there and the living conditions and the implications of the Decent Life initiative and how it changed lives. Mrs. Heba, Salah, how do you see the importance of a decent life in Egypt in general, and specifically as the focus for today is Africa and the COMESA heading towards Africa geographically in Aswan and Luxor?
Of course. Building up on what Mr. Ambassador has been mentioning, that we have to boost the joint investment between each other and focus on the inclusion. If we focused on inclusion rather than the exclusion of some of the African states, we will be able to achieve some important and great things. Also, he talked about the transportation, which is very important, and creating common roads linking the African states together. It will be of a huge benefit for the free trade area, and also for transporting the goods and services, as well as labor and persons, which will gradually get us to eliminate the requirement of visas between the African states. Decent Life Initiative has been making great deal and has been making great difference in people's life. It's also talking and focusing on inclusion of all Egyptians. And if we focused on building each other and everyone focused on including himself or herself into the process of building ourselves, it will be it will reflect, of course, on afterwards on the African member states. Each and every state will enhance and will develop and will achieve great things.
Yes, inclusion and not exclusion within Egypt and for the Africans. And this is a very important point, because one of the main points addressed by President al-Sisi during his speech at the summit, that the Cairo, Cape Town, or the Egypt-South Africa road, it is missing just a few kilometers or hundreds of kilometers. What is the importance of linking Egypt to South Africa and, of course, to every other African state geographically?
Geographically, it will be enormously useful to transfer goods and services between the African states. And I believe that COMESA has only 21 countries, and we have in Africa from 55 to 56, I believe, African country. So we need to include these countries as well. So paving the road for transferring and people and services and goods will, of course, reflect on people's lives and on the initiatives that the African states develop furthermore.
Yes, in the past 7 or 8 years, President al-Sisi also mentioned the importance of having the private sector and the government hand in hand in terms of development and progress economically for Egypt. And we intend to be having the same experience in Africa, to be drawing up a list of possible opportunities for the investments in Africa. What are the main sectors, in your opinion, and fields in Africa that could be attracting foreign investments or maybe African investments within Africa and the foreign investments from outside of the continent?
The boost joint investments are very important, and of course we have to use the consultation internally and externally to create a business-friendly environment for each and every economy to thrive. So if we succeeded into achieving this, we can say that the Egyptian government as well as the private sector will benefit a great deal from this, and it will open up communication channels between the African member states, and it will achieve what has been put on the plan.
Yes, and the ties between Egypt and Africa is not just about the economy or money or investments, it's about the healthcare of the Africans in general, the livelihoods of the Africans in general, because in the past year, specifically when Egypt headed the African Union, we had the same initiatives, the health initiatives that we had here in Egypt were the same, had the same impact on the Africans. They were replicated in Africa, like the hepatitis C or the virus C. How do you see the importance of such a step, of linking Egypt with Africa in terms of health?
Building up on what you have mentioned, that the health sector is very important, especially during the pandemic, and fighting these diseases is going to help decline or reduce the effect that it has on the economy. So we have to use the challenges as a motivation for us to start awareness campaigns, to start vaccination of people, and of course this will help protect us and will help to promote further the economic integration and, of course, the industrial and the integration, which will help in building hospitals, in building community centers for the vaccinations. So it will definitely help in this.
Yes, the economic integration, of course, within Africa was faced by the corona or the COVID-19 pandemic that took place all over the world, and specifically hampered the economic growth, the potential economic growth for the Africans. How do you see the challenge of the COVID-19, of the coronavirus pandemic, and at the same time we need to be leading or pushing Africa into more growth? How can we achieve both at the same time?
It's a great challenge. We have to move hand in hand with all the government sectors and the private sector as well. If we succeeded into moving hand in hand, we will try to achieve some progress in defending or in creating like a borderline for us to help protect people and protect the nations from this pandemic.
Yes. The Egyptian products, how can we be better marketing them as we are heading the COMESA now for the Africans?
The Egyptian products, definitely, if we tried and focused on building the infrastructure, it will help the products to be more exported to the African countries, and exporting the goods and services into the African countries will help in developing the economy of each of the African member states.
Yes, the amount of the trade exchange between Egypt and the COMESA countries or the bloc is amounting to about $3 billion. So we have China, India, and Turkey topping the list of countries who are exchanging trade and economy or investments between them and the COMESA. Why do you think that countries from Europe or from Asia are better than the countries within Africa in terms of the trade exchange?
I think that we have a long road to walk through and to benefit from the experience of the Asian or the European experience. If we tried or followed the ways that they have been following for years now, we can start to maybe not completely, but in a way of speaking that we can partially achieve what you're talking about, yes.
Yes, and finally, when can the African citizen feel the progress that we have been speaking about in the past hour, the roads, the infrastructure, the COMESA, the new trade agreements, the customs union, the common market?
Everything will take time. It definitely, it will not happen if we push the button or something. So we have to wait and see the progress, but we have to be hopeful for the future.
Yes, Mrs. Heba Salah, the political science researcher, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Anytime. This brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye.